June 2nd, 1888, Pittsburgh Commercial Gazette, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. A Sailor's Yarn. The Big Bird That Attempted to Fly Away with a Boy. San Francisco, May 28. Periodically, some ship from southern latitudes brings home a story of enormous birds that have been encountered during the voyage. As the encounter as narrated usually consists of nothing more than the sight of the birds, the statements are passed by as seaman's yarns, or, if the auditor is more charitable, he decides that the narrator has seen a rather large albatross, which by the light or the conditions of the air was made to appear of enormous size and strange color. A few years ago, a ship brought to this port a curious monster bird, which had been found floating dead in the sea. It was pronounced a condor, a bird found only among the loftiest peaks of the Andes. It had probably been injured high up in the air in a fight with one of its own kind and had fallen into the sea. The birds the sailors tell about are such as might come from a cross of the albatross and the condor, if such a cross were possible, except for the size, which is greater than that of either. A strange story told by Captain Putt of the British ship Talisman, which came around Cape Horn from Liverpool, makes it appear possible that the stories of the sailors may not be all exaggerations or inventions. The ship, said Captain Putt, had a hard time from the start. We had to do a lot of repairing at the Falkland Islands after going through a gale that almost sent her to the bottom. From the Horn up to the Chilean coast, we floundered in a changing gale for 2 weeks. One day, the mate's son, a lad of about 15, was thrown by a lunge of the ship from his seat on a cross tree into the water. The boy was wrapped in a big sou'wester. A sailor named Banning saw that the boy could not swim, wrapped up as he was, and leaped into the water after him. The seawater in this neighborhood is so cold that a man cannot live much longer than 25 or 30 minutes in it. The attention of every man on board was given to the 2 men in the water, but when one sailor raised his eyes and saw an enormous bird making direct for the boy, he emitted a cry of terror, which was joined in by all as soon as they saw it. It did not resemble a cloud, nor did it carry a rock in its talons, but it was an enormous creature that no 2 men would care to battle with under any circumstances. When Banning raised his eyes and saw the bird, his first thought was to turn around and make for the ship. Fear took possession of him, and his strokes grew less powerful. Seeing Banning's danger, James Cray jumped in after him. Just as he reached the water, the great creature reached the boy, who was growing very faint. At first the bird seemed undetermined what to do. It pecked at the boy about the body, heeding not the shouts of the sailors who sought to frighten it away. It was some time before a boat could be lowered, and by the time it was let into the water and manned, the boy had gone down once. His sudden disappearance surprised the bird, which was about to turn its attention to Banning when the boy came to the surface again. I ran to my cabin and returned with a rifle to shoot the bird should it grow ugly. When I got on deck, the first thing I saw was the strange creature rising in the air with the boy, and its mate, which suddenly appeared, almost as large, was attacking Banning. He was on his back, dodging the beak of his adversary and swimming toward the vessel with all his might. I was never more excited in all my life. I hardly knew what to do. The boy was being carried away and was up 30 or 40 feet in the air. "Shoot the bird," yelled the mate, running about the deck like a crazy man and shouting at the top of his voice orders that were not obeyed. In shooting, I, of course, ran the risk of killing the boy instead of the big bird, if, indeed, he was not killed by the fall. But there was not much time to think of this. The bird was still rising, and after a hasty aim, I fired. It was an excellent shot. A wing fell helpless as if I had broken it, and the bird tumbled down into the water. The second bird, when it saw the boat approach, left Banning and made a fierce attack on one of the boatmen, striking him with its foot, a blow that felled him to the bottom of the boat. Another of the crew raised an oar and hit the bird with all his might, when it flew away. Banning, Gray, and the boy were picked up. The latter was unconscious, but after a good rubbing he was brought to. Banning was bleeding about the face and more or less injured about the body. The wounded bird fought viciously when an attempt was made to capture it. It was finally lassoed and taken aboard. 3 weeks afterwards, it died, and it is now at Valparaiso being stuffed. The boy said that before he went down, he found himself losing consciousness and grabbed at the enormous bird that was hovering over him. He caught its feet and held on with the grip of a drowning man. He partially regained his senses in the air, but thought he was higher up than he really was and did not dare to let go. I have seen many big condors and other large birds, continued the captain, but never any winged thing as large as this. The stretch of its wings was over 14 feet. The head and neck were destitute of feathers, and the former, which was much flattened, was skinned and bleeding. It had the big, strong back of an albatross, and the plumage, though somewhat darker, was not unlike that of the latter bird. Its feet were only partially webbed. During the time we had it on board and until it died, it was not seen to eat, but it slept constantly and took some rough handling to awaken it. August 15, 1924, Lake Benton Valley News, Lake Benton, Minnesota. Ingenious thief had crow as accomplice. An ingenious trick was that practiced by a youth named Boschat early in 1911. He went into a grocer's shop in Paris and asked for some sugar. And when the grocer returned from getting it, he almost jumped out of his skin to see a black crow sitting on one of the shelves eyeing him. The bird fluttered about the shop, defying all efforts of the grocer to capture him. While the tradesman's attention was disturbed, Boschat quietly rifled the till and then gave a little whistle. At the signal, the crow flew out of the shop, with its owner after it, apparently doing his best to capture his pet. It was only when the clever thief and his black accomplice had disappeared out of sight that the grocer discovered how he had been robbed.